Amanda Christovich from Front Office Sports joins us now. Amanda, you have been doing a lot of work on this. And congratulations, by the way, on this. You did get to go on vacation and come back, right? You're not talking to us from an airport in Bahrain or something, are you?
I'm not. I'm not sure that I would go on vacation there.
Okay.
But I went to France. I went to Paris for my vacation. I did get to go. I came back. There was no house settlement. Then there was a house settlement, and now I'm in Orlando for an ACTA, the athletic directors meeting. So everything's fine. Honestly, it could have been worse. So thanks for
yes. Well, I was very worried for you and for everybody else in the business who is waiting for this to happen. So this is a good day for college athletics in the fact that they can finally move on. Now, the devil's going to wind up being in the details of what's the next landmine that they didn't anticipate. And the first thing I'll ask you about, because you've done a lot of work on this, is how does Title IX fit into this? Because it doesn't appear that they thought that part all the way out, because it's really confusing how to make it balance out based on how Title IX, that statute's written.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Title IX question is still to be answered. Honestly, it's been definitely a conversation. There are multiple sessions about it here at the athletic directors meetings. Folks are just very confused because the Biden administration said Title IX did apply to revenue sharing. Then the Trump administration came in and said it didn't. And the judge said that Title IX is a law that needs to be followed, but the settlement is not a Title IX case. So while in the future Title IX can be adjudicated and you can sue based on Title IX violations related to the House settlement, the actual settlement itself doesn't really address Title IX because it's not a Title IX, case, is kind of what she said.
Amanda, so you are at NACTA, which for those that don't know is the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics. So you're in the midst of all these athletic directors. It is a brand new world since Friday. I mean, it is the House settlement passed. What is the feeling like? What is the buzz like? What is the conversation like in this brand new era we've now entered into over the weekend?
Yeah, I think it's a combination, a sense of relief, I think, a little bit that, hey, this is the thing we've been planning for. And even though it's been stressful and there are still a lot of question marks, at least the thing that we were planning to change did in fact change, if that makes sense. I think everyone is very relieved that this happened before July 1st when revenue sharing was supposed to begin. But I do think there is some anxiety about the remaining unanswered questions, if that makes sense. So, who is going to sue to challenge these House settlement rules? And is that going to hold up in court? That's, I think something that's on everyone's minds. There is not a lot of faith in this NIL clearinghouse. I'm not hearing a lot of folks thinking that it's really going to work and really going to be able to, keep pay for play out of the NIL part of college sports going forward. But ultimately, I think everyone kind of has a sense of generally how their athletic department is going to approach this first year, whether they're going to opt into the settlement, whether they're not going to opt in. I've heard both, based on budgets and where a school might be in terms of just where they are in the Division I landscape. So I think there's less chaos than I expected, but still a lot of anxiety and a lot of unanswered questions about how all of this specifically is going to be enforced.
When you mention NIL Go and the clearinghouse, what are their big concerns about it not being able to root out pay for play?
It's a great meditation sport. It's just yourself. You get out here, feeling the rhythm, feeling the rhyme. It's a good time.
Gives me the opportunity to hang out with the fellas for about 5 hours, and I get some solitude, relaxation, and a great time.
There's nothing I love more in life that doesn't have a heartbeat than golf.
I like the frustration involved with trying to find that right elusive swing. Or I just like to have a couple cocktails with some friends and maybe some cigars.
Golf is therapy to me.
Malban Golf.
Well, I spoke with the Boise State athletic director, Jeremiah Dickey, today, and he kind of had an interesting, I'm not going to remember the quote exactly, but he kind of talked about the return of the brown bag deals.
$100 handshakes.
Yes, because, over the past few years, there haven't been like the quote unquote bag men that, were in the college sports world of yore, where like you would have, you weren't allowed to pay players anything. They couldn't profit off of NIL. So you just kind of had to the story is for the uninitiated, you leave the paper bag of cash in their locker or, through a handshake or at their apartment doorstep or whatever. That hasn't really needed to happen because you just call it an NIL deal over the past few years. Now, with this clearinghouse, there's this adjudication model of like scrutinizing deals and asking, are they pay for play or are they fair market value? What is fair market value? We don't quite know, actually. We're not sure that anyone even deciding what fair market value is legal. But assuming that it is now, some athletic directors are wondering, like, okay, does that mean that the brown paper bags are back? Does it mean, in the sense of like we're going to call a deal an NIL deal, and then just not report it and see if we get in trouble? Are we going to just forget the NIL deal and like send money completely under the table? Those are some of the concerns that are being raised that I'm hearing this week so far about whether, like ways to circumvent the clearinghouse.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I mean, that's a very good point. We love Jeremiah. He's a good friend of this show. He's great athletic director and a really cool guy. I guess on the flip side, what's something that people feel most positively about, or is there something that people feel good and kind of all agree on, like this is a good thing that is going to be here moving forward? No? Okay.
I mean, I think that this may not be a universal opinion, but I think it's pretty clear to everybody that athletes deserve a bigger cut of the revenue that departments, conferences, and the NCAA are making through, the sports that they are playing. And so creating a model to pay players, even if you don't like the way that the model was created or the way it's going to work, like I feel like there's a general consensus that everyone's in favor of players getting more money and being able to offer players more money as a recruiting incentive.
What do you think the future is for Olympics, or at least the challenge is going to be for the Olympic sports under this? Because 75 to 80% of the money is going to football, and then the rest of that money gets to go spread out over everything else, which most of it will go to basketball, and then it seems to be like 5% of it left for everything else, which is a lot of athletes. In Olympic sports seem to be maybe in a little bit of danger.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been concern that Olympic sports are going to get cut because, schools love, every time there's a new athlete compensation model that comes out, schools love to sort of threaten like, oh, well, we're going to have to divert our funds that we send to Olympic sports in order to pay for this new thing. And we've seen a couple examples of schools cutting sports, but newsflash, that hasn't gone over well from a PR standpoint. So I don't think we're going to see as much of that as maybe we were warned. I do think that Olympic sports athletes are going to struggle to get a cut of the revenue share model that is like anything substantial. I spoke with Texas Tech's athletic director last week, amid their softball women's college World Series run. And he kind of talked about like, we are going to allocate the percentage of revenue that the team brings into our athletic department. That's how much revenue we're going to give to said sport. So like softball makes 1% of Texas Tech's athletic department revenue, or at least it did in a couple of years ago when he was like, the example he gave me. And 1% is still a few $100,000, but it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. Now, he said that this is going to incentivize at least the bigger athletic departments to try to like make more money off of their Olympic sports. And in turn, the higher percentage of athletic department revenue you make, the more you're going to get in rev share, right? So the question is, which athletic directors and which schools are willing to invest in that to figure it out? Because it's certainly possible. There's so much untapped potential in a lot of these Olympic sports to be more so self-sufficient from a revenue generating standpoint. But And even some of the biggest athletic departments were just not there yet. So I think it's a question of like who is interested in, making that extra effort.
Well, yeah, I've always thought like, there's got to be a middle ground between we watch it so intently every day for 2 weeks and then never. Right? So, like, if I'm going to watch every single swimming heat and event during the Olympics for 16 days, there's got to be a middle ground where I will watch it at least a little bit more than 0 times every 4 years. Right? Like, that's the thing. I want, that's the middle ground I guess they have to find. When it comes to the enforcement arm, and they obviously have a new a guy who's in charge of that, comes from Major League Baseball. Do they believe it will be faster and more efficient? And do they believe that it will be, like when Brett Yormark says that they'll be punitive, what kind of punishments can we expect for bad actors in this system that really sting?
So loss of eligibility is something that is written on this new enforcement arm's website as a potential ramification of not following the rules, whether that be, you don't put your deal in the clearinghouse, or the deal is said to be pay for play and you go forward with it anyway. But beyond that, we don't know. I actually asked that question of all the power conference commissioners today in that press conference. And I said, what are the punishments going to be? And I believe ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips was the one who answered the question. And he said, he kind of gave this long-winded answer of like, we've had all these discussions about it, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, they don't know yet. They were like, Brian Seeley, the new CEO of the commission, is going to decide that. So we don't know. Which is pretty crazy, because the athletes are supposed to start reporting their deals, but they don't know what the punishment is for not reporting. And as was brought to my attention here, it's hard to convince 18, 19, 20-year-olds to give up 6 figures or more when they don't know what the punishment is for not doing so.
Yeah, and they've got 2 days, right, to start doing that. Like that's when it opens. They have to submit that. Well, I mean, I guess it opens on July 11th or June 11th. They don't have to specifically do it that day, but they do have to do it if they want it in the clearinghouse. So it seems like you're walking around a room full of really confused people, but at least they know what specifically they're confused about now.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Yes, They know they are definitely confused, but they know exactly what their questions are now. And so now it's like a combination of like relief that it happened, a little anxiety about what's next, a little confusion, and also like some frustration about like, okay, well, the questions that we had that we didn't get the answers to, we were told we would get those answers when the settlement was approved. It's been approved. So now we want the answers so that we can plan our academic year.
Yeah. Okay, so there are whispers of maybe a congressional bill appearing before the House soon. That it's could be out of committee and presented for a vote at least sometime soon. I would assume that should this budget reconciliation hit the wall again, that's going to be way further backburnered. But is there more optimism about that happening, especially given the fact that Greg Sankey and Pete Bavacqua were at Bedminster with President Trump over the weekend?
I'm not sure. Clearly the House of Representatives has taken a bigger interest in legislating college sports, in my opinion, at least now than they did before. But I still see the Senate as the sort of main body because, you need 60 votes to get anything through the Senate. Therefore, you need 60 votes from the Senate to get anything into law. So I'm not, there's no more consensus in the Senate than there was 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. If the House is talking about NIL, that still doesn't get past the biggest hurdle. You see what I'm saying? But there is a bill that they're going to discuss on Thursday, and we'll have to see, what the finer points of it are. But again, even if it passes the House, which Republicans have a pretty comfortable majority, the negotiations that are going to have to take place in the Senate like still exist.
Okay, so one major thing is resolved, but it created a bunch of more issues. Is that like what is the focus of your writing going to have to be on it now, or do you have is it like a myriad of different things that's going to happen?
So, look, there is a lot of fallout to this, and there are a lot of questions. I'm going to be asking who's going to file the first lawsuits, and are they going to be successful? I'm going to be asking what sorts of congressional maneuvering, as we talked about, is going to be different. Are there going to be new asks, new lobbying parties? Is the Trump administration going to make a decision about whether or not they want to be involved in this? And then I'm just going to try to talk to as many people as I can about whether or not there is a positive or negative impact to them because of the settlement. I think that's kind of how things are going to shake out. Obviously, there was a lot of private equity news today as well. Mm-hmm. Private equity getting into college sports is a new revenue stream, which, there's more incentive for that now than ever. So we'll be following that as well. But I got a long list of stories to go through.
Okay. The last thing I'll ask you, affiliation agreements that would, I guess, supersede state law in a lot of cases. If Alabama has a law that says this is what schools can do or athletes are entitled to, but it doesn't fit in with the House settlement rules and what the new commission comes up with, you have to sign it to be in the SEC or whatever. How do you think those will come along, and do you think that anybody will opt out because of those things?
Well, Brett Yormark today said that there was no pushback about the affiliation agreement that he presented to his schools last week at their spring meetings, which I found to be quite interesting. I had heard at least a few weeks ago, a month ago, that there was some pushback about these affiliation agreements. Ultimately, though, I think it's a bit of a straw man, because the people who are going to be suing are players, collectives, boosters, even state attorneys general. So unless, and I've heard sort of mild rumors that there's language in these affiliation agreements that threatens the school if someone affiliated with the school, like a state attorney general or an athlete sues, the school will get penalized. But ultimately, there are so many different parties that you can't get to sign these types of agreements who could challenge the settlement terms in court, that I'm not sure how much these agreements really even matter at this point.
All right, Amanda Christovich, she's our go-to on all things confusingly legal. And so, Amanda, thank you so much. Enjoy NACTA, and I hope you get some answers. I hope they have some to give you by the time it's over.
At the very least, I'm in a room full of people who are just as confused as I am. So, thank you for having me.
It's good to feel like you belong. It's very good to feel like you belong. Amanda Christovich, Front Office Sports